Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man! At your service. Today, sporting a McDonald tartan. Lovely, blood red, which is very appropriate. Now, folks, hope you're all doing very well. I come equipped with coffee and whiskey. Yes, it's the new double act I like to perform with. Almost like my backing singers. Now, somebody somewhere once said that beauty is only skin deep. Well, it would appear that during the late 70s and early 80s, there was somebody out there who was determined to see whether that was true or not. Just how deep did beauty go into the skin? And that little somebody was the Benny Hill of Gore movies, the little diminutive Roman gnome of nasties, Lucio Fulci. Now, I've discussed him on the channel a great many times. I know. And we all know his highlights. And despite doing a huge amount of comedies, thrillers, giallo, westerns, futuristic action stuff, fantasies, the guy is most renowned for, and yes, we know it, zombie flesh eaters, The Black Cat, City of the Living Dead, The Beyond, The House by the Cemetery, and The New York Ripper. Now, into this maelstrom of misogynistic mayhem and mutilation becomes this absolute gorgeous goddess of gore, Daniella Doria. Now, if anyone ever suffered for their art, it's this poor girl. An absolutely beautiful woman to this day, you know. And even with all the things that we've seen little Lucio get up to, with his special effects and his nastiness, his grue and his gore, he would go the extra mile with poor Daniela. And he would use it in 4 movies. He would use a lot of regular cast members in the movies, mostly Catriona MacColl, who also suffered quite a fair bit. But nobody went to the extremes that Daniela did. Now, Daniela didn't make a great many movies. In fact, it's almost as though experiences with Lucio kind of turned her off the whole thing of being in front of the camera, you know, because nasty things tended to happen to her, you know. And if that's what, you know, making movies was all about, then I've had enough of this. Thank you very much. But this is like a little tribute to someone who is gone unsung. Unless you're a complete genre devotee, you're on the forums, you read the fanzines, you know, you've studied these movies. She doesn't mean a great deal to people outside of that realm, and that's deeply, deeply unfortunate because, you know, it's the supporting cast that make these films in particular so bloody memorable. Yes, you've got the likes of David Warbeck, Catriona MacColl, you've got Christopher George, Janet Agron, you know, Tisa Farrow, Ian McCulloch, who I've interviewed as well, and he had a few anecdotes about little Lucio, which I'll come on to in a bit. But Daniela was only very young, and she'd only done a few movies, but she had got into this thing at the Italian Splatterfest, you know, and she couldn't really get out of it because little Lucio got his hooks into her. And as I said before, beauty only skin deep. He was determined to pretty much turn poor Daniela inside out. Wait till you hear the roster of things that happened to this poor girl. So first of all, we have City of the Living Dead, aka The Gates of Hell. The poster for which is up there somewhere around about there, yeah. Somewhere right behind my viciously barnetted bouffant hair today. And in that, she's making out in a car with Michele Soavi. Michele Soavi, who would go on to do the likes of Stage Fright, Della Morte Dell'Amore, The Dylan Dog, whole fantastic movie that is, with Rupert Everett playing Della Morte Dell'Amore, and The Sect and the Church and a few other things. But there he was, learning his craft. He'd learned it from Dario Argento, he'd learned it from, you know, Lamberto Bava, Mario Bava's father. He'd also learned it from little Lucio, probably how to cut corners and throw extra maggots into scenes, you know. and he's there making out with, delectable Daniela. And the priest of Dunwich, it's a very Lovecraftian tale. Dunwich has committed suicide, thereby opening the gates of hell. And he's wandering around his graveyard, and suddenly with his baleful eyes and this blue, misty, evocative, atmospherics, puts the evil eye on poor Daniela. Daniela then begins to bleed from her eyes, which is a very striking image. But Lucio doesn't want to, just entertain us with bloody eyes. No. He wants her to then vomit up the entire contents of her inner organs. Everything. Heart, lungs, liver, spleen, intestines, bowel, everything is going to come out of her mouth. It's possibly one of the most literally gut-wrenching sequences that you're ever going to see. It's horrendous. And he made her put in the entrails of a freshly killed sheep. I was going to say goat then, but it wasn't. It was a sheep. And as Lucio said, it's got to be fresh, because if it's not fresh, they dry up and then they're unusable. Put them in your mouth now. Now, Daniela, did you look at the script? Did you think about this for more than 3 or 4 seconds? And then go, Lucio, I'm vegan. I can't put that in my mouth. That when you get out clause. Lucio would not have put up with that though. What do you mean you're vegan? Put my meat in your mouth. Do it now. Little Gino de Campo. Of course, she puts in a huge amount of these fresh entrails. Blood's being pumped in. She's got tubes running through her hair, a lovely blonde hair, to pump blood from her eyes. And then she has to barf up these horrendous items of entrails and guts and stuff. Very fresh, not very palatable. And it's horrendously believable stuff until it cuts to the animatronic sort of puppet head, because in the close-ups where the bowels and intestines rush out like that is not her. Thankfully, that's not her. Poor Michelle Sovi, who is sitting in the car next to her, watching all this. Obligingly, he gets his brains ripped out by a sundry zombie which appears. The zombies in City of the Living Dead have a habit of, they must have very strong fingers, of reaching into the backs of people's skulls, twisting the skull, the cranium, and wrenching the brains out. Lucio Fulci, as Daniela will remember, was a volatile character. On set, he would berate and go ballistic upon members of the cast and the crew. In fact, the only person he really got on with was his regular cinematographer, Sergio Salvati, and the two of them were really good friends. But everyone else would bear the brunt of his vehemence and anger when things weren't going right. And I know that there's a moment in City of Living Dead where Christopher George, who is the leading man, who then gets killed, his brains get ripped out, and the bloody scalp with a bit of brain tissue on it is lying on the deck of this subterranean catacomb beneath, beautifully filmed and beautifully art directed, beneath this haunted graveyard. And a rat is meant to start nibbling on this brain tissue, and the rat wasn't interested. But little Lucio didn't like that. Ooh, eat at the brain! He's shouting at a rat. This was highly, sort of publicised by people. He's shouting at it. He's going ballistic on a rat. Do your job. I employed you to eat at the brain. Anyway, after City of Living Dead, Daniela would then go on to The Black Cat. Now, The Black Cat is a very restrained movie for Lucio during this period. There's plenty of killings in it. There's a smattering of gore. There is violence. There is death aplenty. But it's a more restrained sort of supernatural whodunit. Don't go thinking Edgar Allan Poe with the title The Black Cat. It kind of doesn't really do that. Patrick Magee and David Warbeck and Mimsy Farmer also star in this movie. Patrick Magee, great character actor. And here, it's his black cat that's doing it all, And it is doing these killings. And poor Daniela, again, it's another make-out scene. She and this guy end up in this secluded boathouse where somehow or other the cat will manage to lock them in there. and then the air conditioning goes off and the heating goes up and they can't get out and they asphyxiate rather horribly. And then the bodies are found and it transpires that her face has been eaten off by rats. Those bloody rats have come back again, you know. Better trained this time, although you don't see that actually happen. You think by now Daniela would have realised, you know, I'm being hired for a reason here, and that reason appears to be take my top off and then get killed. Yeah, it's true, because in the next film she did for Lucio, The House by the Cemetery, starring Catriona MacColl again, and a very gothic, splendid horror movie this one, also very nasty, gave the BBFC a few headaches as well. And in the sort of prologue sequence, where is she? She's in the house by the cemetery. She's snuck in there with a fella, of course. And what are they doing? Well, you can guess, can't you? She will find her fella who's gone missing, impaled to a door, and then as something lurches behind her, suddenly a big, huge blade, and I mean a big blade, goes through the back of her head, and the blade comes out of her mouth, like that. And then she will hit the deck and then be dragged off by the vicious, horrendous living dead Dr. Fraudstein, who's living in the basement, and he's been rejuvenating himself with the bodies of the living that he's just freshly killed, drags them down, hacks them up, and somehow or other grafts their bits onto himself. One can only imagine what bits he wanted from young Daniela. But you think by now, look, Lucio, is this all I'm going to do? You're just going to bring me in here to die spectacularly? And see, you know, because that is exactly what's going to happen. Now, we come on to The New York Ripper, a film vilified at the time. The New York Ripper and Maniac, Bill Lustig's Maniac, were held up as being the epitome of absolutely, totally misogynistic, uber violence, hatred against women, absolute hatred. They didn't neglect, you know, the ulterior motives and the multiple layers and textures of these films. Yes, they were exploitation. Yes, they were extremely nasty, but there were underlying messages in these films. And of course, they're now hailed as absolute classics, albeit for people of a very jaded sort of palate. But Fulci's film, The New York Ripper, really did stoke the ire of the BBFC, because it was submitted a few times. It was never going to get through uncut. And I think to this day in the UK, you can get the film, but you cannot get it uncut. Of course, I've had an uncut version since the 80s, you know. But it was even given a police escort out of the country. They said, look, we're not going to have this film circulated at all on UK shores. Get it out, police escort to the shores, customs, off you go. Don't ever darken our shores again, little Lucio. And but the sequences in particular, which all the killings are harrowing in The New York Ripper, all of them, without a doubt. But the protracted torture and mutilation that poor Daniela undergoes in this really does go, some would say, how far can too far be? Well, Lucio certainly found where too far can go, and he pushed it there. The killer in this, the Ripper, known as Quack Quack for his penchant, his penchant for speaking with a sort of ridiculous Donald Duck style voice, where he taunts the police, headed up by a rather impotent and useless Jack Hedley, British actor Jack Hedley, who'd been in lots of TV shows, and like many British TV show personalities, would find themselves washed up on the shores of, you know, paella and spaghetti splatter, and found a new career in Euro horror, Euro trash. Jack Hedley is an absolute sleazeball, a two-faced sleazeball detective, really ineptly chasing up this horrendous butcher of women, women of supposedly loose morals, a stripper, hookers, a MILF exploring her fetishistic fantasies, you know, from an impotent marriage, and paying the price. All these women pay the price of this butcher with a razor blade, with a knife, with a broken bottle. Some very nasty stuff in this movie. But Jack Hedley's copper is also having an affair, well, regularly seeing a stripper called Kitty. Enter Daniela. To taunt this copper even further, the killer then traps Daniela in her apartment. Naked, tied down, he then goes to work on her with a razor blade. And, but it's all broadcast. It's all over the phone and a walkie-talkie to the police. And what makes the sequence two reasons that sequence is so incredibly grueling. Obviously, the vicious bloodletting and the sheer torment that this poor girl, played by Daniela, goes through. But also, Jack Hedley knows who the girl is, so he knows where she is. And if he gives that information away, that it's going to implicate himself that he's been seeing a prostitute. And he holds back for too long. And then finally, he'll get to the address and off we go. Too late, of course. He's held back there. And it's that element which, shit, you know what's happening to her. You've got feelings for this girl as well. And yet you've allowed this to happen. Now, in this film as well, we're spared in one way because the effects are not done by Fulci regular Gianetto De Rossi. He would also work with a guy called Gino De Rossi, which is actually Luigi De Rossi, and the two guys are related. But Gino De Rossi, his effects work is not of the same calibre as Gianetto De Rossi, whose stuff from Zombie Flesh Eaters and The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue is a lot more vivid and visceral and convincing in every way. So, in a way, we're spared the true horrificness. If Gianetto De Rossi had got his hands on poor Daniela for this particular sequence, where her abdomen is split open, her nipple is sliced, bisected in close-up, and worst of all, her moving eyeball in loving, lingering close-up is sliced by a razor blade as well. It's grotesque, beyond belief, even for die-hard gore hounds like myself and many other fans of Fulci movies. You feel, oh dear God. You appreciated the gore effect, you appreciated the tension and the suspense that he delivered, but you thought, you've had to film this. The poor girl is lying there nude, being, enacting being mutilated by a psycho. And it does leave a very sort of sick taste in the mouth. Years later, I've reviewed the film many times for different formats and different forums, and I think it's a great movie in its own right. And that sequence, as horrendously grueling as it is vitally necessary to the story of the film. Daniela acts superbly. For someone who is strapped to a bed, her mouth is initially taped up. It's she only made 2 movies after that, and it went for Lucio, and then she went into modelling, I think, and but moved out of acting. But I know that she has some fond memories of all this as well. During the filming of The Black Cat, where they were in England and they were staying in a hotel in London, she and Lucio both bought dogs. Dogs weren't allowed in a hotel, and she snuck her dog in. They were found out, they were sussed, and she fled from the hotel with this dog as well. I don't know where they went, probably Battersea Dogs Home or something like. But she, like many of the people who worked with Lucio, does remember him as being a bit of a rough customer, but also very sweet at the same time. So it seems that if he wanted to get something done, like any artiste, any auteur, any maverick, you could say, they have a vision, they have a singular idea, and if you deviate from that, the frustration will get to him. I remember Ian McCulloch saying about, during the filming of Zombie Flesh Eaters, that during that, there's a lot of scenes where the main cast are actually on a boat in the Dutch Antilles, and of course they've got the famous sequence where Oretta Gay goes underwater, naked again, and is menaced by a shark, and then menaced by a zombie, who then attacks the shark. One of the most surreal sequences. Only little Lucio could have come up with that one. And but during this sequence, you know, the camera crew on the boat weren't getting the shots just right. The second unit director wasn't doing this thing right. So he was like, well, I will steer the boat. So he gets behind the wheel of this boat, full power, full steam ahead, fucking plows straight into the boat where the main cast are. Because he can't stop it. Gets it, falls into the water. Divers have to go in and rescue him and save his life. But there's a little sort of segue into the mindset of this guy. But without a doubt, his unsung hero of these movies, poor Daniela, goes through hell. And even in sort of little tiny supporting roles, she still gives it her all to vomit up, you know, fresh sheep's guts. Are you going to do that? Are you going to do that? Are you going to do that? You know, no matter how much you get paid? No, I don't think so. And the thing about it, she is gorgeous. Now, at that time in particular, films from the 70s to right the way through the 80s and beyond, with the Scream movies as well, if you were a very attractive woman in a horror movie, if you weren't going to be the virginal last girl, the final girl who's going to survive and kill the slasher, the monster, the whatever, you're going to get away, then you were going to be promiscuous, you were going to be asked to disrobe a little bit and show some flesh, and then you were going to be offed. That was it. Daniela sadly fitted into that role all too well. Magnificently, I would say. But there is a thing about, you know, the women in horror movies. Lucio did kill fellas as well, but without a doubt, this slew of movies and his gialli, well, women were the primary targets. That's just the way these films are constructed. They are part of the formula. And rightly or wrongly, you know, he offed quite a lot of ladies in some very, very graphic and drastic ways. But anyway, folks, lest you worry about poor Daniela, she's doing well. I have it on good authority, namely from the lovely lady herself, that during lockdown, she's still perfectly safe and healthy, and she's enjoying binge watching on Netflix at the moment. So, good luck to you, Daniela. You are the goddess of gore. You reign supreme. You have Scream Queens, but you have Gore Queens. And you, without a doubt, are at the top of that game. Nobody that I can think of has gone to the degrees that you did and suffered as much as you did in the name of fantastical horror, art, entertainment. So, ciao. I admire your work, love your stuff. Stay happy, stay healthy. This was Kilt-Man's little tribute to a lady of unfortunate demises, shall we say. Spectacularly nasty deaths in movies. If nothing else, you have gained, you know, the endless love and adoration of legions of fans around the world who are devoted to these movies, and you will forever be remembered because of them. In fact, I used to love these movies so much, horror movies in general, and you think, oh, there's another fit girl who's going to get her top bits out, and then she's going to get her throat slashed. Yeah, we've seen it a million times. But the weird thing was, every time I saw you on screen, initially, I'd think, oh God, no, don't kill her. Oh, please don't kill her. Oh no, but you'd then go on to die in the most grisly fashion, and I'd be like, oh God, no. So during those days when I was a young lad collecting all my video nasties, and your name would crop up, and I'd be, oh no, it's gonna die again. Oh no. Anyway, you are part of my upbringing, part of my filmic education, and quite an integral part, I will say. Long life and health. And I'm going to see you all. Oh, hang on. Cheers. Laters! Put the meat in your mouth. Do it now. Ciao.